I need to add a plywood board to a garden table. Plywood? This might seem a bit odd, but we'll see why I'm doing it. I have to cut 2 large circles. You all know that I don't like drilling a hole to pass the jigsaw blade through, because it leaves an awful mark on the edge. And I have a better woodworking trick. First, I have to cut the corners of the board, so my guide doesn't get caught. It may seem like extra work, but the guide with bearings allows me to cut the board, making a perfect edge. Now I'm going to adapt that strip of plywood to make a guide for cutting circles. You know, with 2 pivot points. First, I cut the slot for the jigsaw blade. And now I drill the holes to join both guides with wing nuts and bolts. I measure the radius of the large circle I have to cut. There goes the second pivot point. And I mark another 12 centimeters for the first pivot point. I want the marks to be at the same distance from the edge as the cutting blade. I will use nails as pivot points. I mark the reference line. You don't need such a long line. A mark would be enough. And now I insert the first pivot point. Do you know how this works? Okay, let's see this woodworking trick in action. I remove the second pivot point. And now, how do I put the cutting blade in the jigsaw? Well, since this radius is wider, moving the guide back leaves the jigsaw outside the board. So now I can switch to the second pivot point. There it is, a perfect edge, without any marks. This is another guide with bearings that allows me to make perfect cuts. I leave the links in the description so you can watch how I made them. I made them on my other channel without comments. This way I have these 3 identical pieces. There they are held with clamps to the metallic foot of the garden table. I mark where the holes for the anchor bolts go. I also numbered the pieces to know where each piece goes. I drill a blind hole to house the head of the bolts. and I drill the holes for the bolts to pass through. I insert some round-headed stainless steel bolts. The head must be completely inside the wood. And that square part below the head must be recessed into the hole. This way, I have 3 pieces like this. Each one fits perfectly in its place in the table leg. On top, I will screw a board that is smaller than the one I already cut, but I still have to cut it. And on top of that board will go the one I already cut, which will be screwed from below to the bottom of the small board. And with hex nuts, everything will be attached to the table leg. Actually, wing nuts will be used, so the plywood board can be removed and put only when needed. There's the foot ready for the boards. Okay, I cut the bottom board, which is smaller than the top one. Even if the cuts are good, it doesn't hurt to sand them a bit. Now, on the bottom board, I made marks every 15 degrees. And from the center, I drew all the radii. I made marks at 5, 20, and 35 centimeters from the edge. And connecting the outermost marks, I made others between the radii. And I drilled a hole at each mark. The holes I made are just the right diameter for the screws to pass through with just a little push. This ensures that the screws will pull the top board, pressing it against the bottom one. This is the side that will go against the top board. I countersink the holes a bit to make sure no shavings will be in the way between both boards when I put the screws in. I center the small board well with the large one. And I make some marks to save the position. Now I center the table leg well on the small board. There we see that I made sure the wooden slats were centered with the radii. I drill more holes and countersink them, again, to ensure no shavings get in the way between the board and the slats. I put the foot back in place and put in the screws. The screw heads are recessed into the plywood. I can now recenter the bottom board with the top one. And I put in all the screws. Yes, I know it seems like too many screws, but the table leg is very heavy, and it will probably be dragged by the board from time to time. That's why I want to make sure it will hold up to that strain. And we can now mount the board on the table leg. The thing is, this table leg already has a prettier board, but it needs restoring. And that's what I'm going to do in upcoming videos. Restore this garden table to perfection. The board I'm going to restore, and the one I made in this video, both will be held with butterfly nuts, so they can be put on or taken off easily as needed. This way, the board I just made will be used only for dining in the garden, and it can be easily removed for storage when not in use, and the restored one, which will look nicer, will be put on. Thank you for watching the video, and if you like my videos, subscribe and click the bell.